What a
All right, now we're live. Hi everyone, Dan here with the Designers Show. I'm with Kevin and John. I don't think people can hear that video very well. I was playing some this little video here where I captured all these images of Kevin and at some of the events he's been at with us, and I forgot to hit go live. So you guys, Kevin and I were talking to each other, and I didn't even realize it. So silly me. Anyway, so some of these clips are really cool, and you know, I got to know Kevin back in 2014 when he came to my first chief architect training class in that was Las Vegas back at that time. Yeah. And so it's been fun. Kevin's been to 6 out of my 7 IBS events that we've done. It's been really amazing to get to know Kevin and watch him grow his business and just mature as this amazing designer. And so part of the reason I wanted Kevin on here was to let me get John. Are you in here? Well, John to the stream too. I want to get Kevin on here because, you know, the reason I want Kevin on this show is because he's done. I actually made a few notes here. I've watched him become extremely successful selling his design services. John, I'm getting a lot of static off of your mic for some reason.
Okay.
Is that you? Yeah, it was you. So when Kevin came to my first International Builder Show event back in 2014, he had a bunch of questions about, you know, what he was doing with his business, staying in the business. Weren't you even considering that, Kevin, back at the time?
I was thinking about transitioning it, yeah.
Yeah, and so we got to talking, and I think the bottom line is we came to the conclusion that you weren't valuing your knowledge and experience and talents as much as you should be, or should have been, and you are now. And I think you went away from there, and the next year you came back, and you had some pretty amazing transformation at that point, didn't you?
Yeah.
So
good.
Tell me about that little story with the Post-it notes that happened that year.
Okay. So what Dan's referring to is that I was really, we had a conversation at one of the first meetings about, you know, what are you guys charging? And why are you charging what you're charging? And where does, you know, how are you setting those costs? And everybody was kind of stumbling around about, you know, I do it as a square foot price. I do it as this, I do it as that. And the bottom line to all of it is that we're all uncomfortable about how much we charge. My dear brother, Gary, who was a artist, was one time approached by one of his patrons who said, "You really have a hard time asking for money, don't you?" And the bottom line is, he did, I did, I think we all do inherently. But the key is that you have to value yourself as an equal to whatever service you're providing. Your value is in the service you're providing, and you're worth every bit of whatever you're providing. So by feeling like you need to be empowered to ask those questions, to ask for whatever that is, that's not a wrong thing. That's just a concept that you have to embrace and be able to get over. And we have a hard time with it.
Yeah,
I did. So this guy says to me one time at a meeting, "Kevin, what are you charging?" And I said, you know, I don't know. And he said, "Whatever you're charging, you're worth twice that." And I said, "Yeah, that'll be the day." You know, he says, "What are you charging?"
I think you were at $75 an hour at the time, right?
Yeah, well, I was actually at 125 at that time.
Oh, okay.
And so he says, "You know, you're worth twice that, whatever that is." And I said, "I think I'd have a hard time asking for $250 an hour." And he said, "Okay, this is what I want you to do." Well, actually, he left me a message on my phone the next day. Said, "This is what I want you to do. I want you to get your daughters and get your wife and get a stack of Post-it notes and write on that Post-it note, 'I am worth $250 an hour.' And then put those Post-it notes everywhere. Have your daughters put them everywhere you go, everywhere you see. You open a cabinet door, it says it there. You walk into your mirror in the morning to brush your teeth, it says it there. Put it everywhere you go. It's on your steering wheel. It's on your briefcase. It's on your computer. It's everywhere you go. And he said, I'm telling you, I want you to do this. So I didn't. And, and he caught me at the next meeting and said, how did it go? And I said, yeah, you didn't do it, did you? I know. So then he called again, but he called like every week for about 5 weeks, calling and leaving these messages on my office phone, which I promptly ignored and didn't do what he told me to do. The 6th week, he just went ahead and called my family, and he told them to do it. I came home one day and there were these Post-it notes everywhere. And I was finding those damn things for months. but there were Post-it notes everywhere that said that. And the funny thing that happens when you do something like that is that at first you laugh, at first it's uncomfortable. A little while into it, you start to think, maybe, could be. Am I? I don't know. Am I? I don't think I could. Could I? And then you start to kind of play out the scene in your head. Is this something that I could actually do and ask for and justify? So then you start attempting it. And I attempted it with, okay, I'm worth $125.50. You start to think about, is this possible that you could raise your rates? And I'm telling you it is. And I don't know who's on the line right now. I know, we have clients, Dan and I, John and I have clients who are builders, contractors, and designers. And it's hard to figure out how to justify what you're selling. But I'm here to tell you, whatever you're selling, if you're good at what you do, you're worth twice that. So, and turns out, maybe not the next year, but maybe the year after that, I was at $175 an hour. Year after that, 200. Year after that, 225. Now I just charge anything I want. And it's really interesting because sooner or later, the market will tell you where you have to stop.
Yeah.
And
it was really interesting talking with you yesterday when you mentioned that you just kind of charge whatever you want, which sounds kind of cocky, but it isn't. I mean, you get to choose who you want to work for, what kind of jobs you want, and ultimately the value you bring to those kinds of projects it's pretty amazing. And
well, thanks, but I appreciate that, and I don't mean for it to sound cocky. I mean for it to sound encouraging to people, because we undervalue ourselves.
Well, once people get to know you, they'll realize that that's not cocky at all. You're really worth more than that. So you are really good. The stuff you come up with is absolutely mind-bending. I don't know how you do it. I just don't know how you do it. So that's why you're on this call, because you're going to maybe give us some insights onto how you do some of that.
I love to talk, as you can tell. So,
I never knew that. Anyway, we've got a bunch of people on the call here, about 9:30, but this will be live for people, or this will be online, so people can watch it anytime. And Jeff Rexford's on. He says he's going to miss going to Coeur d'Alene this year. Jeff, we're going to miss you too. In looking at some of those pictures from different events that we've done, it's just like, oh gosh, it's only been 5 months, 6 months now
that we've been in seclusion.
Yeah. And it just feels like forever. It's just amazing. There's Heidi. She says hi.
Hi, Heidi.
And Ricardo, hi from Colombia.
Hello.
So again, part of the reason that I'm so excited about having you on this call is, again, I want to pick your brain a little bit about, how you go about looking at each client. When a client calls you and they say, hey, we want to do this and this, what kind of goes through your mind? What do you think about that? What goes through there? And ultimately, you're trying to find out if that, if you're a good fit for the client, but more importantly, you're trying to find out if that client's a good fit for you.
Right.
So that's really what I would like to stress to people. So what I'm always stressing to people in the design world, and the contracting world too, but especially design, because we're the designer show, is that, most contractors, and you were doing the same damn thing back in 2014, you're really good at what you do, but you've been doing it for so long. It just becomes kind of like, whatever, just another day. of doing the stuff that we do. But people don't realize that. So that when you come out and you're the guy that brings you got that little tablet now, but you bring your little thing out and you sketch out a little thing and you flip it around and turn it. Says, is that what you want? Don't read my scribbling, because that isn't what we're doing. And you go, and they go, yeah. It's like, okay, what's that worth? It's just like you just came up with this brilliant idea, and maybe you don't get it the first time. Maybe it takes a few times. So what goes through, when someone calls you, what's kind of that process that you go through for that?
So I think that the first thing is the phone rings and you decide whether or not you're going to answer it. And that may be because you're so overwhelmingly busy, you don't have time to answer the call. You couldn't take the work anyway, but hopefully it's more like, okay, I'm ready to answer this call. Let's see who it is. Some unknown is on the other end saying, I would like to do something, whether it's remodel a bathroom or build a party barn. It's something.
Kevin, while you're talking, why don't you have the party barn open on your computer?
I may have.
If you do, why don't you show?
There's that's just a purely accidental shot, but.
So why don't you go ahead and show your screens, and while you're talking, maybe you could show a few clips of that project.
How do I do that? Share the screen?
Yeah, share your screen, and then you'll get the option of what you want to share. So
got it. Okay.
Yeah. So this was an award winning. You won a HGTV award on this party barn. I did have the pleasure of seeing the outside of it and looking through the windows on the inside. Okay, there we go. So there you are. So it's on the screen now. This is your website, and this is where you have some of your things posted. So if you guys want to go look at some really cool projects, Kevin's got lots of them there. So
anyway, it could be, and we can talk more about this party barn, which was a lot of fun as we get into it. But just so you know what you're looking at, this was a machine barn on a client's property. He had 15 acres, and this was an old, ugly, beat-up machine barn where he kept trucks and tractors, and interior was gas heater hanging from the ceiling and things like that. And then the idea was make it an entertainment space worthy of having party of 400 people. So this is the outdoor space. Great. So as it goes through, you'll start to see the interior. What I was saying was when the call comes in and the person on the other end is telling you what they want, your first thought is, do I want this opportunity? So you have that right off. And the challenge is if you're new and getting started, or maybe your client base is people that really are working on things that are more affordable, therefore you need more of them. If your emphasis is bathrooms, maybe you need 100 of them a year. But if your emphasis is, outdoor spaces and somebody wants a bathroom, right off, this call's not for me.
Right.
Well, when we start talking, we start evaluating these things anyway, through the process about whether this is a job for me. And the trap we get caught in early on is that we take everything. If there's a grain of bread on the ground, we're going to grab it. And that's good to get you up and rolling. But what I have come to is that whatever I'm working on is taking my time from something else. Yeah. I can't do two things at the same time. So the question really is it worth it to me to take this breadcrumb, or is there another one that I should wait for and take that opportunity? Obviously, in the early days, I took everything that I possibly could. But in time, I realized that by doing that, I was missing out on things like this. And so now I'm pretty picky about what is said on that phone call. And as you said, Dan, evaluating both whether I'm okay for the client, whether I'm selling myself, or whether I'm evaluating whether they're okay for me.
Yeah. So again, that makes perfect sense. So you've talked with the client, you kind of, how do you get to that point where you start talking about the B word?
The B word. You have to be careful using the B word. but
John, do you know what we're talking about? The B word?
Yeah, I know what the B word is.
Okay.
Are you sure, John? It might not be the one you're thinking of.
No, I know the one you're thinking of.
So, the key that it seems like the thing that we all struggle with is how to approach the budget. And how do you breach that topic?
He said it. He said it, Dan.
Yeah, the B word.
The B word.
Budget money.
It wasn't breach. So how do you make it past that and into the conversation that finds that it really evaluates whether their budget is realistic? So, the first thing is to break that ice and talk about it, and that we can do it very. How can we do it? We can do it in a very organized fashion where, I would like to ask you about your budget now, kind of questions, mechanically and tailored and read off of a sheet. And this is the time for me to ask this question. I find it a whole lot better to just wind it into the conversation someplace. And when I do that, it's more a matter of saying, at some point in this conversation, we need to figure out whether we're good for each other. And the reality is that there are people that you would love to work with and people that you might not. And same is true for me. So when I really think about from this phone call, is this a good opportunity for both of us? Then I think, okay, well, where's your location? And is that someplace that I can service? Also, is this something that is realistic from a time frame standpoint? But from a reality standpoint, it also has to be realistic from a budget standpoint. So,
I like how you weave it into the conversation. Yeah, it's just
and so I'm not putting them on the spot regarding that, but I'm landing on it and then coming back to it and saying, for instance, I can throw those things in there. For instance, if what you're asking for is a party barn and your budget is $20,000, clearly that can't be done. If your budget's $1 million, it can be done. So the question is, where is it in between those 2 points? And what I usually try to do is pick a point that's too low, radically too low, and a point that's radically too high, and then get them over the shock of both those two things. And then say, so the key here is that is your budget realistic for what the effort is? So do you know where you need to be from a budget standpoint? And there's usually a pause and a hesitation, and I'll tell them a lot of people don't. That's very common. So if you're uncomfortable or you don't know, the key here is that I can design to any level. I just need to know what level I'm designing to. So do you see this as something that is, say, $100,000, $500,000, $750,000? And what I'm doing is I'm helping them arrive at a budget that I consider realistic. And if they stay with me, they get into the list that I'm going to go visit. If they don't stay with me, then I find a nice way to end the call.
Yeah, I do like your comment once. Lance says he does a lot of estimating work. Some days he doesn't even want to think about the dollar signs. I like how you phrase it. You want, how do you do it? Cool, kind of cool, really cool. You have that phrase that you use that.
So I just ask him, so, I can take you to the moon. You just have to tell me, how cool do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
And then, and they usually say, yeah, well, I'm not that cool. Okay. So where would you like to
or the moon is no problem, however you want to get there. So you ever get those kind of clients that don't have a budget, just like whatever?
I do. There's a couple of them that we find out later had a bigger budget than we thought. But for most part, the one with the party barn, for instance, said, I had worked with him on 3 other projects, so he knew what I could do. Mm-hmm. And he said, I don't want to give you a budget. I don't want to limit your creativity. And I said, okay, but you need to give me some idea of where you want to be.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't want to limit your creativity. So I said, okay, then I'm going to go away and come back with something that's cool. And I did. And I came back and we went through the show and tell, and it was cool. He loved it. And he's going, okay, that's freaking awesome. I love it. So what's it going to cost? And I said, right now I'm probably about $1.5 million. And he said, $1.5 million. Okay, well, going to have to think about that. So He calls me up the next day and he goes, "I'm not spending $1.5 million on a farm." I said, "So you do have a budget?" Okay. So tell me where that budget is. So anyway, we had to then come back to a point of reality, which in almost all cases, and I think you guys can probably relate, that point of reality isn't realistic. So where they believe it can be is different from where it's going to end up. And
yeah.
I just embrace where they believe it can be and work from there.
Huh, interesting. So Jeff says, I broached the subject by saying, I don't know what this project might cost, but you must have been thinking about what you are willing to invest. There's more to finding out budget. Yeah, so that's true. Yeah. Everybody has a number in their head. Everybody. I don't care what they say.
Right.
They look at their savings account and say, that's all I got. They're going to cash in some investments. They're going to go get a loan and they can only afford this much of a payment, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always a number. And so it's really, really important that you find that out.
True.
You do have a nice way of going about that. So how do you approach the client then when they say, well, what's it going to cost to design this thing? Because I know that's become a major profit center for your business now, right?
It has.
Yeah.
That again, if who we're talking to are chief architect designers, that's one thing. If we're talking to builders who are using chief architect, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
So the key to all of that, though, is that I don't care which path you have taken, somebody has to spend time to design something, unless you're just that good that you can pick up a hammer and start building something. So that time should be compensated. In a case of like ours, where our projects are very design intensive, that compensation should be something that makes it well worthwhile. And I think it's really easy to discount the value of that design early on. So I like to tell them, we are a design build company, and we have two processes. One is the design process and one's the build process. So we have two agreements, and you're not bound to either agreement or both agreements. It's just a matter of where we go. So my design agreement is something that we start if we feel like we're going to get along and this project's going to be good for both of us, then we move into a formal design agreement, and I bill that time separately. And then at the end of that design agreement, we decide whether we're going into construction. So that takes all the pressure off of the client, off of that particular customer, as far as them feeling like, I'm going to make this commitment up front for a project that I don't even know if you're any good. Yeah. That's fine. And so you can support that if you're getting, cringy eyes and things with statements like, the design process is probably the single most valuable dollar spent on the entire project. So that money you want to spend no matter what, and no matter who's building it. So you want a designer that you feel like can do what you want to get out of it, and deliver that, and a builder who can execute that. Now, in reality, 95% of our projects we end up building, because by the time we get there, our clients have built up a trust in us, and you probably will too.
Yeah.
So we can go there at that point in time. But for now.
So of all the people that call you, what percentage do you end up actually doing a design for?
Well, I only go to those projects. I start out by weeding them out on the phone call up front and saying, my initial consultation is $250. And for that, I'll come out to your home and dream with you, and we'll take a look at some things and try and get a good idea of what might be possible in your space and how much that might cost. But that initial consultation really doesn't come with a tape measure or plans or anything else. That's just a conversation. That's some dream time. So if that sounds good to you, then we can set up an appointment. That way, 5 out of 10 aren't ever going to take me up on it to begin with. Of those who do, they're going to be somewhat serious. That said, I just went on one the other day that by the time I left there, it was quite obvious that all he wanted to do was pick my brain for good ideas and then have cousin Charlie come build it, which is fine. At least I was compensated for my time. So I was okay.
True.
So I don't go anywhere for free. It all costs something.
Cool.
But then if I'm standing there in their space and we move into a design agreement, once I'm at that point, probably 9 out of 10 I'm going to sell a design to. And out of those that I sell a design to, 10 out of 10 are going to go on and build.
Yeah, that was always my experience when I started charging for design too, back in the day.
Yeah.
John, I think you're doing the same thing now, right? So
Yeah, I started charging for my designs probably 3 or 4 years ago.
yeah, and that's weeded out the chaff and the people that you don't necessarily, that aren't serious about the projects.
Yep.
Plus, there's a whole bunch of other reasons. In fact, on my website, if you go to Chief Experts Academy, I do have a handout on there that talks a lot of good reasons why design is a good thing for everybody. So Bill has a question. And by the way, you guys, if you are on the call here, by all means, feel free to ask questions, make comments. Okay. Come on, guys, let's get involved here. Kevin's here to help. And if you guys have questions, by all means, ask away. So
Yeah, I'd love that, because if you're looking for a formal presentation, I didn't create one. I'm just here to see if I can help.
Yeah, we weren't here to get a formal presentation. We're here to pick your brain. So you guys, again, please ask away. So Kevin is a successful contractor and a very successful designer. Put the two together and you're busier than you know what to do with. So Bill says he's writing an article for City Magazine about what to expect to pay for a design professional. What do you say to that, Kevin?
I think the when you say design professional, it can take any form. Is that design an interior designer? Is that design an architectural designer? Is that design an architect or a structural engineer? Yeah. So if you're looking at an architect, an architecture firm, you might be paying 15% of the project budget for that design work. If you're looking at somebody that might be on this call, then I expect, just looking at my historic data over time, for the design to come in costing anywhere from about 4% to 8% of the overall budget. So a $100,000 job should bring in about $8,000 in design fee, or $4,000. It just depends on which end of the extreme it goes.
Yeah. I imagine you find out some projects take more design than others. Some projects take more detail than others.
Right, I do, but I also write my design agreement, so I'm covered no matter what. So if it's a $100,000 project, but somebody wants 15 designs, it's not going to be $8,000. It's what I do with mine is to I build a retainer that I get on the very first day, and I work with that retainer until I've exhausted it, and then I ask for more. So the retainer that I ask for, though, is based on experience and is a pretty good guess at what I think the design fees would cost in normal circumstances. But if somebody does want 15 designs, I ask for more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, time is money.
Right.
So, and you've mentioned it before that you don't necessarily say that it's going to take 5 hours or 10 hours or 20 hours because you don't know.
Right.
So you're more or less putting a value on you put more of a value on the service you're offering in the experience you're bringing to the people and the results that you're generating, whether you do it in an hour or 10 hours.
I do. I'm not a big believer in the dollars per hour model.
Yeah.
I'm more a believer in the value that I'm bringing to the project. And I believe that my basic philosophy is that you should be compensated for what you know and how good you are. The other side of that is you should be as good as what you're being compensated for. So if you're going to try to charge somebody $200 an hour, you should be worth $200 an hour.
True.
And otherwise, I think that you can have some short-lived success, but it's not going to go on.
Yeah. How does someone figure that out? What would you say to that?
Shoot for a 40% rejection rate.
Okay.
If you assume that you can make the living that you want to make on 60% of your successes, then you're doing less work for more money. So if you continue to raise your rates to the point where you are now being turned down, well, you've probably hit the cap. You've probably hit where you are. Okay. Now, where your value is in that is going to be based on your reputation. So if people are calling you because they've seen these miraculous things you did, your value is going to be higher. If you're not, you're either starting out or maybe being highly creative is not your skill set, being a great project manager is your skill set, then you're going to have to shift your expectations the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose part of it depends on the types of projects that you're getting involved with, the types of clients you're getting involved with. I mean, if you're doing the same bathroom every day, that's a little different than if you're doing a super duper custom room addition with a custom master suite and all of that stuff. That's, you're talking two different animals there.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's, again, as you mentioned, it's kind of knowing where your value is. We've got Heidi was asking, Kevin, you charge an initial deposit. We are doing it, but we think it might be too low.
Well, if you think it's too low, it is.
Heidi, you just answered your own question.
Doesn't really matter what the number is. If you think it's too low, it's too low.
Yeah.
So
Heidi,
do we charge an initial deposit? Absolutely. So are you talking about, Heidi, from a design standpoint or once it gets to the build?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's just I think Heidi they're not contractors. I think they just do design.
Oh, just design?
Yeah.
Oh, well then absolutely. So, everybody has their comfort level. I was saying in the early part of this that the Post-it note said I'm worth X per hour, right? I'm worth whatever that is per hour, whatever number makes you comfortable. No, whatever number makes you uncomfortable should be on that Post-it note. You need to be able to reach for something. So put something in there that seems absurd and then reach for that. But I don't charge by the hour because thanks, Heidi. So I don't charge by the hour because I find that I spend my time at 3 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when I wake up for a nap, after my family goes to bed, and I'm sitting there with a scotch. It's really hard to figure out how many hours I spent specifically on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But what I do know is I know I want to make between 4 and 8% of the project budget. And I think this project's going to come in at $200,000. So my time should be done accordingly. What I do is I look at it in chunks of time. And this isn't for everybody. This is just the way it works for me. And I tell people right up front, I sell my time in increments of $1,000. And $1,000 roughly equates to a day's work. When I look at this, I think that this is about 5 days work. I think that's probably realistic and falls in the boundary of what my expectation is as far as the 4 to 8%. So I think it's a good starting point. So if we want to go into the design agreement, then I would be looking for a retainer check of $5,000 today, and we'll go from there. So and that's how I do that. So far, it has worked 100% of the time. So if you are looking at a design agreement that you expect to ultimately get $5,000 for, then my personal opinion is get it up front, because intellectual capital you can't take back. So once you've shown it to somebody or given them the plan, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
So my thing is that I always charge ahead of time.
For all of it?
For all of it.
Okay.
So I estimate what I think it's going to take me to do it. I charge for it, and then I tell them I'm working on a retainer basis. We'll whittle away the time as we go, and and whatever is left over, we can apply to the project. Or if you choose not to go forward, I can return it to you. But so far, 90% plus of my clients move forward. So
yeah,
we'll probably use it.
Yeah, I think most people find that too.
So Kevin, do you think that by doing it in a lump sum like that versus by the hour, it takes the focus puts the focus on a different point to value?
I do.
For instance, if you do a lump sum, they're valuing the finished product.
Yes.
If you do it by the hour, they're valuing your time, which they might not value as much as you do.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
So if I told somebody that I'm charging $250 an hour, then that's something that can turn people off. If I tell them I'm charging $1,000 and that it roughly equates to a day's work, they're doing the computation in their head and saying, well, that's $125 an hour and that's reasonable. Whether I do it in 4 hours or 8 hours is my business.
Good point. I like that. So back to Bill's question. John, you got something you want to add?
Me?
Okay.
No.
Bill, how much, again, what would you say to Bill? How much would you expect to pay for a design professional?
I would say you should be looking, if it is an architectural firm, you should be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 15%. If it is an independent designer, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, pick a number, 4 to 8% is what I find. I usually am thinking in my head it's 5 to 10, but 4 to 8 sounds better. So
Are you getting a different product between those two? Architectural
are.
firm versus a designer? Like architectural firm, you're getting the structural and all that stuff included, or are you including the structural in your 8%?
I am including the structural in my 8%, but then I'm hiring that structural engineer and I'm incorporating what I need to know in the plans by that. So effectively, they're paying for the structural engineer through the time that they're paying me.
Yeah.
So in your mind, you're getting the same thing for half the cost.
No, because I'm not a licensed architect. I don't have that piece of paper hanging on my wall. I'm an architect by desire, and being the guy that actually has the firm and is paying that overhead and has the support staff and everyone else, it's going to be more. Now, the end result of that is they also went to all of the formal training to incorporate things that, unless I have learned everything they have, they're probably developing something a little different than I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And, an architect's going to perform some of the services you perform as a contractor sometimes. They'll help with the project management, the scheduling, selections, so that can add up.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get at. What's the architectural firm providing for their reward, and what are you providing, and how are they different?
I'd like to believe that everything I generate is at the same quality level from a documentation standpoint and a deliverable standpoint as what they're generating. But I'm better. I'm not stupid. I know that where my value is in my creativity. Out of 100 architectural firms, there are 3 that are highly creative. The rest are executing, plans. So I look at it like where I start to balance that scale is in my creativity. I may not be delivering the same level of detail in all of my plans, but I'm delivering imagination that most don't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I mean, we all have our strengths, and so that's where mine happens to be, and that's where I find the thing that allows me to be equal.
Bill mentions in his research he's interviewed plan designers who report as low as 85 cents a square foot. Bill, I know guys that charge 50 cents a square foot, and well, maybe not anymore, but that was a number of years ago, and $150 an hour. So I think in the remodeling world, in the new home world for your typical house, yeah, that's probably reasonable. I think, square foot price, you're probably more than $1.25. Well, again, it depends on what you're getting for that square foot price.
It actually also depends on what the plans are for, and that's the thing. This is not an apples and apples situation. If you are knocking out new homes, $85 a foot is fine. You're going to knock out that new home 23 times, and you're going to change a few things about it. 85 cents a foot's coming in as a nice number.
Yeah,
right?
And likely more than $150 an hour.
Yeah, and
if it's that type of situation.
Yeah, we all know among John, Dan, and several others of us, people within the chief community who are making an absolute bundle, churning out plans for new homes. My thing is that that's not my skill set, is to churn out plans for new homes. My skill set is in delivering something that's highly unusual.
Yeah.
And consequently, I have to value my time and a different way.
In Roy's statement here, do you treat remodels edition or new homes the same as in design fees? And we don't do elaborate custom homes. That one word, elaborate, that if you're doing a detailed, you do a lot of highly detailed custom work.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to take a ton of time. The stuff just doesn't fly up in there and be done by itself. And I always tell people in remodeling, in room additions, just a series of answering 5,000 questions. When I'll throw the word elaborate in front of that, and you just added 10,000 more questions you got to answer.
So, more than anyone possibly anticipates. But Roy, I think that you probably asked that question at the same time as I was kind of answering it, which is that new home builds where you're going to replicate the same kinds of details. I'm going to use the same trim, the same doors, the same ceiling, the same windows, the same whatever over and over and over. You can make a lot of money on a lower price, however you judge that price, square footage or otherwise. But in remodels, the other side of your question, where every single project is unique, then you've got to charge more because it's taking a lot more of your time to do that. Every one is a new thought process.
Yeah. And, it's kind of the same as a remodeling contractor. You go into someone's home and, the home's kind of messy and it's normal, there's dust everywhere. I mean, you're not going to have to be as careful on that job if you walk into a home with white carpet and 1,000 knickknacks on the shelf and everything's immaculate and you have to take your shoes off. I mean, you want to treat each client a little bit differently. So
right. Some of them you may be building dust walls and out of plastic, and others you may be building partition walls with access doors that are sealed because the family's got allergies and you're sharing the air. It's just way different. So I don't really treat those the same way.
Yep. So Kevin, we got about 15 minutes left here. I got some questions we'll come back to, but how do you? I mean, we talk about all this creative stuff you do and all that. Were you born that way, or how do you come up with all this inspiration for all of this cool stuff that you design?
I'm a weird son of a bitch.
You're a weird dude, huh?
Yeah.
You're elaborate.
I honestly, which is a phrase I hate, by the way, smack me every time I answer a question with honestly. What am I going to lie? So when I look at the 62 years I've been on the planet, the one thing that has come to be true is that we're all given gifts, and those gifts we're likely born with, and we do with them what we can. Some people are meant to be highly successful doctors in neurosurgery, and others are meant to dig ditches. We're given a gift and we do with it what we can. Yeah. So in my particular case, I came from an artistic family, an artistic gene pool, and that's been good from a creativity standpoint. I live in fear of the day that I walk into a gray concrete basement and all I see is a gray concrete basement. But so far that's never happened. I walk in and I see 16 different ideas. So no, yes, I think you're born with it, but I think you develop it. My own experience has been that whatever your gift is, do it, no matter how small. And then the next time you will expand on that, and you'll do something better and bigger and cooler, and it just keeps going. So if you end up deciding that your forte is building dog houses, then build dog houses, but each one's going to get better than the last one.
True. So yeah, just, keep developing those talents that you have, stay educated, be curious. I think the biggest word is curious. You have an amazing amount of curiosity, and that you're always coming up with, well, maybe this, or how about this?
Well, I do have one thing that has been my best friend through all of this, and that's that I don't believe there's anything I can't do. So
yeah, it's kind of the problem with remodelers. They all believe that.
but literally, I mean, if you look at I'm working with someone right now. He's a builder, but his approach to everything is it can't be done unless you prove it to me. And my approach to everything is it can all be done unless you prove it can't. I just approach things that way, and so the wild ideas don't have any boundaries; they just keep going.
Well, that's, I like that attitude too. And I've always been like that myself. Let's see if we can figure this out. We'll figure something out. But back to the time thing. Okay. So if you got a difficult project that you have to go through that process of figuring a lot of stuff out, it's going to take a bunch of time.
Right.
And who's going to pay for that? And again, that put the value on your time, your creativity, your curious ability to solve issues. I guess to solve problems or opportunities, whatever you want to call it. So no, that's cool.
But there's one thing I want to add to that too. Yeah. If you look at charging by the hour, you're effectively being reactionary. the idea of charging by the hour says that I need this much money in order for me to feel good about whatever I'm charging, or I made this much last year, I need to make this much this year, to increase. But you're reacting to those sales. Mine is more proactive. I more look at it like, how much money do I want? And if I want $250,000 a year, how can I make it? And so I look at it like, I don't really care whether I've got 100 projects or one project. I just want to end up with $250,000 a year. So how do I do that? It's just a different way to look at it. I think.
It is. Work it backwards. Here's what I want. What do I have to do to get there? Like you say, 100 projects or one project and everything in between. So how do you brand yourself? How can people go about branding themselves a little bit better to attract the clients that they want? I mean, that's something that you've gotten really good at.
Yeah. And I think that you can go through, well, I did everything everybody else did. I had the magazine advertisements and things, and the printed ads and all that. And in all the years I did those, I got one phone call, from my printed ads, and they were cool ads. And I got one phone call, and that was somebody looking to find out what kind of tile I used in that picture. So I'm not a big believer in the printed ads. I am a big believer in getting your name out there in whatever form you can, meaning that I started entering contests, I started winning those contests, and I started then advertising those wins. And then as that happened, I continued to do that until I had won a lot of contests, and that speaks for itself. People look for award winners, and being an award winner is great. But if you won the Boy Scouts award for the coolest project that year, you're an award winner. So how you then spin that is up to you. You do have to then defend the question when somebody asks you, so I had you out here to my house because you're an award winner and you won a Boy Scout award. So you have to understand that you do have to come back and defend the spin.
Yeah.
But it is important to toot your own horn. I found that the awards were really great. Participation in organizations like NARI, the National Association of Remodeling Industry, and entering their contests, and also then looking at things outside those boundaries, like something that might be more national or international. Like, for instance, House, of course, has their House Pro program, which works really well for getting your name out there, but it's pricey. HGTV has a pro program that most people don't know about, but you can hang your shingle in that program, and then you can start touting it via social media or whatever. The main thing, though, is to build the reputation, and that's what you can lean on, and that's where the people will find you. Yeah,
you've done a nice job at that. Of course, you cheat a little bit. You got your wife working in there pounding the pavement for you, so that
helps.
We'll give her most of the credit.
Good thing I have her, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, Judy does a great job. She's the president of NARI now too, so right. That's been a real blessing for everybody, because she brings a lot of value to the industry. So Lance is asking, do you approach designing with budgets in mind the same way as a design build contractor? Well, you are a design build contractor.
I'm a design build contractor. So yes. However, I try and find out through the design phase what is realistic from a budget standpoint, and then I usually push that a bit. Not like I'm taking advantage of anybody, just the nature of things. People hired me because they're expecting me to do the unusual, and the unusual costs more. So
yeah. So Jeff does time material. He adds potential cost range based on a written description of the scope of work. Yeah, my deposits are usually approximate cost of the typical as-built. So, and again, I mean, if you need to spend a day at a job measuring it, that's a deposit. Just make sure you're covered in advance of the work that you're doing.
Yes,
not the other way around.
That's the key takeaway. I've been burned twice with some very, very, very serious dollars. 65,000, one of them.
Oh God, I remember you telling me that story.
And so I don't do anything anymore after the fact. Everything's paid up front.
Yeah. Live and learn, right?
Yep.
Any advice on our market design service business in today's marketplace?
Well, I think a lot of that goes to what I just said about reputation and social media and that. But I do think if you take a look at your client base, who are you marketing that to? If you are designing apartment buildings for low-income families, it's a different market than if you're designing, shopping centers.
Yeah.
So you have to look at who you're marketing to. And if, for instance, in my market, my client base is typically 45 years old and more, and with a very large disposable income. And so I'm looking at what things they look at, which are things like Facebook and
John, you've been getting really busy lately. What have you been doing?
I don't know. Nothing formal really, but I think one of the key things is just listening to the people that you are talking to, and going into it and how can I meet your need? If I'm able to meet your need, how can I do it? And like some of it is, am I willing to do it?
Yeah.
And
I think, back to that marketing your design service or any business for that matter, go to where your customers hang out. So if if your customers are hanging out at the golf course, go there. If your customers are in a school, go there. Go volunteer at your school. Go wherever your customers are, or the type of work,
And it's not a matter of just going there. I mean, you've got to go there and be involved. If the people that you're trying to attract tend to hang out at Top Golf, go there, but start striking up some conversations with people and play alongside them and ask if they need a fourth and do whatever to just hang out with them and talk. And you don't have to sell them anything. You just have to introduce yourself and explain to them what you do. And, maybe one of them one day is going to say, hey, I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, exactly. So call your past clients too. That's the number one thing I think most people forget about is staying in touch with their past clients.
Yeah.
Send them a letter, send them a note, call them, take them out to dinner, lunch, whatever. Just whatever you have.
Party Barn project. I'm now working on the 5th project for them. I'm building a 2-story master suite for them. And in that, the key there is I stay in touch with them. I stay, top of mind as far as that goes. They're not only a great referral to others for others, but it also reminds them that you're out there and they might hire you again.
Yeah. And ask your past clients too, hey, do you know anybody that might be interested?
Absolutely.
Please give her name out. Heidi was mentioning going back to the, not getting paid. So they're adopting the model, getting charged, paying up front. So good for you, Heidi.
Got that right now, Heidi.
Yep. The guy who does 85 cents a foot punches out 200 plans a year.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So I saw this plan once on this big house. It was a really nice set of plans. And the guy told me how much he paid for them. I just about, are you kidding me? I won't even get out of bed for that. But he said, you look at the plan and it's just all boilerplate. And
right. You're all boilerplate. The guy that's doing the 200 plans a year at 85 cents a square foot is probably making way over $150 an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, and that's okay. I mean, it was a good set of plans that the guy showed me. So it's like, good for you, man. I mean, you found someone here that, you're getting a hell of a deal.
Well, and that's the thing is it has to work for you. If I was, for instance, building apartments, I would give up a long time ago. I can't. My creative side needs to build things that are cool. So the only way I'm going to be happy is to do that. And if I can get paid well for it, great. But if I can't, that's still what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Heidi asks, how long is your design agreement? Number of pages. We tried to keep ours to a page.
Yeah. I know someone that has a 27-page design agreement.
I know why too.
27 pages. I think, my God, that's a lot of paragraphs for lawyers to interpret. Myself, I'd rather not put any more ammo in that gun than has to be there. And so my entire design agreement is name, address, signature, and one paragraph that says in general what it is I'm going to try to produce.
Yeah. And again, as long as you're getting paid up front instead of behind, yep. you control the whole process.
Yeah.
More or less. So, and that's a lot of guys do that. That's fair. Michael's asking how John and I charge. I charge by the hour. I charge 150 an hour.
Yeah, he's actually asking if we get a deposit up front.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I sell my time in lumps of 10 hours. Okay, I'm comfortable with that, and partly because I do a lot of teaching and training in that time. So someone buys 10 hours from me, and we do, this, and this, and then 2 hours are up, done. Then we come back and do this. 2 hours are up, we're done. So that's different than what we're talking about with you, Kevin, with the Korean stuff.
Right, but you're getting paid up front for that, for your time.
I get paid 10 hours, and when that's up, we get 10 more, and we keep going. So I'm always in advance. Yeah. And of course, the times I don't do that, guess what happens? Yeah.
So how about you, John?
Yeah. And for me, it varies for me depending on who I'm working with. If it's teaching, then it's up front. If it's, if it's another contractor I'm working with, I might not get a deposit. If it's a homeowner, I do.
And both of you and the questioner is viewing that as a deposit. I'm not viewing it as a deposit at all. I'm viewing it as payment up front.
Yeah. I don't do mine as a deposit. Mine is just you're buying 10 hours. If we use 10 hours, great. If we don't, great. It's like I've had a lot of clients where I've gotten the stuff they needed done in less than 10 hours. And it's like, great. I mean, they've got some time banked if they want it, but usually they never come back for it. So it's kind of weird how that works.
The thing that happens with my mind, being a seriously right-brained guy, is that I don't track my time well enough to be able to go back and tell them that it took 7 hours and 36 minutes. So that's the reason that I pick a model that doesn't matter. Yeah. And when I said that it doesn't matter to them, it shouldn't matter to them whether I'm working 4 hours or 8. The only person that should affect is me, because in the end, they're paying for the result. So the result has to be worth the money. Yeah. But I would do terribly if I had to track my hours.
Let's see. We've got time for one or two more questions. Let's see. Frank says, I'm of the same fabric as you. Design just flows out of me. We need to focus on solving people's wants, desires, and final yes, that is it. And they will want to do no matter what the cost. So,
and you just gave me shivers. Literally, I just got goosebumps in my arms. You said exactly the same thing that I feel. Yeah.
So cool. I get like that too sometimes. The design flows. But do you ever leave any money on the table until you submit your design? Or do they pay you 100% up front?
100% up front.
Yeah.
Now, that said, let me be clear about that, Roy. Because I don't track my time, then it's quite possible that I am leaving money on the table, but I don't even know it. If I'm happy with the result and the client's happy with the result, that's all I care. So if I was the person who was tracking my hours, that might bother the crap out of me. But the way it is, I don't care. I'm getting what I feel like I want out of that project.
So we're about out of time. So Kevin, why don't you give us the last word here?
But Kevin, you're not really having to pay 100% up front in some cases anyway, because you say, in order to get this far, it's going to take this many blocks of time.
No.
And they pay for that.
Yes.
They pay for the time that you're willing to put into it up front.
Yes. But then if we go into more time, I have them pay that up front. So it's always up front. Yeah. Your mic just cut off.
Yeah. Jeff says, changing his agreement to say first payment, not deposit. That's true. There are legal issues with that. So don't say deposit.
Yeah, there are. There's another thing there too, and that's that. The word deposit versus retainer or payment up front. Those are important to keep in mind. The other one is just from a sales point, just from something that's palatable. The term agreement, it sounds better than contract. Contract has a negative connotation, and agreement has a positive connotation. So mine is a design agreement, a construction agreement. Everything that I do is designed to reach them on a personal and emotional level.
Yep. So one last comment. Matt says, yes, 150 just to meet as a deposit.
Not a deposit. That's not a deposit.
It's a consultation fee.
Yeah, you're asking for $150 for your initial consultation.
Kevin, you got the last word. What do you want everybody to know about? What piece of advice could you give everybody that they can hang their hat on?
Enjoy the ride. This can be a really fun industry and a really wonderful industry. That as Dan pointed out in the early part of this, he and I have been now since we met each other in 2014, have become the best of friends. I love the events. I love the camaraderie, but the networking is incredible. Some of my best influencers, including people like Jeff Rexford, are people that I've met through Dan's program and through Chief Architect in general. But I don't stop with the hello. I love to be in touch with these people and be in contact on a regular basis, and that's who I turn to for my advice. That said, some of us charge consultation fees. If we move into an agreement where I'm helping somebody on a longer term basis, then I'm available for consultation or those kinds of things. But I'm also available, like the like-minded person, just to share some thoughts and fun from time to time. So please stay in touch with me. I'd love to be in touch with you, and for sure stay tightly integrated with Dan's groups.
Cool, Kevin. Thanks a ton for taking some time to be with us. This was fun. We'll have to do it again, and hopefully we'll see you out there at a live event again sooner than later.
Before we get out of the house.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. John and Dan and Kevin signing off. We'll see you guys.
Everybody have a great weekend.